You know that feeling when someone half your age thinks they know better than you do? Well, let me tell you what happened when that cost someone $4.8 billion and nearly destroyed a century-old company. The boardroom on the 35th floor of Hammond Capital Partners always smelled like expensive leather and bad decisions. I'm Charles Morrison, 49 years old, and I'd been breathing that air for 18 years. Senior Director of Corporate Development. Basically, I was the guy who made the big deals happen, the guy who knew where all the bodies were buried. In my career, I'd closed 28 deals worth over $12 billion. Not bad for a guy who started in the mailroom of a steel company back in Ohio. But this deal, the Thornton Industrial acquisition, this was going to be my masterpiece. $4.8 billion. 72 hours until closing. 18 months of careful relationship building coming together like a perfect symphony. I was standing at the floor-to-ceiling window on that Friday afternoon, reviewing the final documents on my tablet. Outside, Chicago stretched out below me, all glass and steel and ambition. The Thornton deal wasn't just numbers on a spreadsheet, it was personal. Frederick Thornton's father had done business with my father back when handshake deals actually meant something. This was old-school money meeting New World finance, and I was the bridge between both worlds. That's when the door practically exploded open. Catherine Walsh marched in like she owned the place, which, in a way, she kind of did. Her mother Jennifer was executive VP, and nepotism runs thick in corporate America. Catherine was 26, fresh out of business school with an MBA that probably cost more than my first house. She had that look in her eyes, you know the one. The look that says I'm about to change everything around here, and you old-timers better get on board or get out of the way. She was wearing a power suit that screamed, "I watched too many movies about Wall Street," and carrying a tablet like it was some kind of weapon. Her hair was pulled back in that aggressive corporate style that's supposed to say serious professional, but mostly just says trying too hard. "Charles Morrison," she announced. Not asked. Announced. "That's me," I said, not looking up from my documents. The Wyoming mining rights clause needed one more review before Monday's signing. We weren't scheduled to meet until next week. "Plans change," she said, stepping closer. I could smell her perfume, something expensive and sharp that probably came with its own marketing campaign. "I'm Catherine Walsh, Strategic Innovation Director," another made-up title for the boss's kid. In my 18 years at Hammond, I'd seen a dozen of these innovation positions created for people who couldn't earn their way into the real jobs. Usually, they lasted about 2 years before moving on to consulting or daddy's friends' companies. "Nice to meet you, Catherine. What can I do for you? I need to discuss some concerns about your approach to the Thornton deal." Now she had my attention. I set down my tablet and turned to face her fully. I'd been working with Frederick Thornton for 20 years, ever since he took over from his father. This wasn't just a business relationship. It was built on trust, shared values, and the understanding that some things in business can't be quantified on a balance sheet. What kind of concerns? Catherine pulled up something on her tablet, scrolling through what looked like a presentation. "Your management style is creating friction with our collaborative culture. The way you handle client relationships is too rigid, too old school. We need adaptive leadership for modern M&A work." I blinked. This 26-year-old was critiquing my management style. The same management style that had never lost a deal in 18 years. "Catherine, I've closed 28 deals worth over $12 billion. Frederick Thornton specifically requested me for this acquisition. His exact words were, 'I only work with Charles Morrison.'" "That's exactly the problem," she said, her voice getting sharper. "You're operating like it's 1995. We don't do business based on golf course handshakes and bourbon meetings anymore. We have data-driven protocols, systematic relationship management, and algorithmic risk assessment." She was reading from her tablet now, like she was giving a presentation to her MBA study group. "Data-driven protocols don't close deals with family companies," I said, keeping my voice level. "Relationships do." Frederick Thornton's grandfather started Thornton Industrial with one steel mill in Ohio in 1938. They've survived the Depression, World War II, the steel crisis of the 80s, and the 2008 recession. You know how? By working with people they trust. Her face was getting red now. "This is what I'm talking about. Resistance to change, outdated thinking. The company handbook clearly states we prioritize innovation and fresh approaches over legacy mindsets." Legacy mindsets. She was calling 85 years of successful business a legacy mindset. "Catherine," I said carefully, "the Thornton family doesn't care about your innovation protocols. They care about integrity, consistency, and knowing that the person they're shaking hands with will still be there to honor that handshake 5 years from now." "Trust doesn't scale," she snapped back. "Personal relationships don't optimize for maximum efficiency. We need systematic approaches that don't depend on one person's historical connections." That's when I realized what was really happening. This wasn't about improving the deal or modernizing our approach. This was about eliminating me from the equation entirely. Catherine wanted to prove she could handle the big accounts, and taking down a 20-year veteran was her way of establishing dominance. She wanted to be the new face of Hammond Capital's client relationships. The problem was, she had no idea what she was actually asking for. "Go home," Catherine said suddenly, crossing her arms, like a school principal addressing a problem student. "Take the weekend to think about whether you can adapt to our new direction. Write a formal plan for how you'll modernize your client relationship approach and present it to me Monday morning." I stared at her. "Catherine, we closed the Thornton deal in 72 hours. Frederick's flying in from Denver on Sunday night specifically for the Monday morning signing. His legal team, his CFO, his son who's taking over operations, they're all coming." "Then you better figure out how to evolve with this company fast," she said, her voice rising. "Because if you can't adapt to collaborative leadership principles, maybe you don't belong in this organization anymore." The room went dead quiet. Through the glass walls, I could see analysts in the open workspace stopping mid-conversation, coffee cups frozen halfway to mouths. My assistant Grace was standing at her desk, phone in hand, staring at us with wide eyes. "No," I said simply. The word hung in the air like smoke from a gun. "Excuse me? No, I'm not going home. I'm not writing you a modernization plan. I have actual work to do, real work that keeps the lights on in this building." Catherine's face went from red to purple. Her hands were shaking slightly as she gripped her tablet tighter. "Charles, I'm giving you a direct order as Strategic Innovation Director. You're not my boss, Catherine. You're 26 years old with 6 months of work experience and a title your mother created for you." That's when she completely lost it. "You're fired!" she screamed. The sound echoed off the glass walls and marble floors. "Pack your things. Security will escort you out. Your outdated, inflexible, arrogant approach has no place in this organization." Several people in the outer office actually jumped. Grace dropped her phone. 2 junior analysts turned to stare through the glass like they were watching a car accident in slow motion. "You're serious," I said. It wasn't a question. I was analyzing, trying to understand if she really comprehended what she'd just done. Dead serious. "You have 30 minutes to clean out your office. Your resistance to change and collaboration makes you a liability to this company." I looked at the $4.8 billion contract displayed on my tablet screen. I looked at Catherine standing there vibrating with adrenaline and stupidity, probably feeling like she'd just slayed a dragon. Then something clicked in my brain. A cold, clear understanding of exactly what had just happened. She'd just fired the only person in North America who knew that the Thornton deal hinged on a handshake agreement about Wyoming rare earth mining rights that existed nowhere in Hammond's digital files. "Okay," I said calmly. Catherine blinked. She'd been expecting a fight, maybe begging, definitely some kind of dramatic scene she could use to prove her authority to the watching office. "Okay, you're absolutely right, Catherine. Standards are important. Change is necessary. I'll pack my things immediately." The confusion on her face was almost comical. This wasn't the script she'd imagined. In her mind, the old guard was supposed to rage against the dying of the light, not walk quietly into that good night. "Good," she stammered. "Security will be up in 10 minutes. "That won't be necessary," I said, picking up my tablet and closing the Thornton files. I know my way out. I walked past her toward my office, and I swear I could feel her staring at my back, wondering why this felt so empty, why her moment of triumph tasted like cardboard. My office was a sanctuary of controlled chaos. Unlike the sterile minimalism of the boardrooms, my space was lived in, personal. 18 years of deals, handwritten notes, and relationships that no computer system could replicate. The walls were covered with deal tombstones, those lucite blocks they give you when you close a major acquisition. Each one represented months of work, millions of dollars, and dozens of jobs saved or created. Catherine probably thought everything important was digitized these days. She didn't understand that in the world of high-stakes mergers, the real deals were made on personal cell numbers written on cocktail napkins and business cards kept in leather address books. I didn't rush. Rushing implies panic, and I felt anything but panicked. I felt liberated. I opened my desk drawers with the slow precision of a surgeon. Personal items first. The framed photo of my dad, who'd taught me that integrity is expensive but desperation costs more. My collection of vintage fountain pens. The crystal paperweight Frederick had given me when we closed the Pennsylvania Mill acquisition 5 years ago. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. Inside was my most valuable possession, a worn leather address book that looked like it belonged in a museum. It contained personal cell phone numbers for 150 CEOs, CFOs, and family business owners across North America, numbers you couldn't Google, numbers that opened doors, started conversations, and closed billion-dollar deals. I dropped it into my briefcase with a heavy, satisfying thud. Grace appeared in my doorway, pale as a ghost, clutching a tissue like a lifeline. "Charles," she whispered, as if speaking too loud might summon more demons. "Is it true? Did she really fire you?" "It's true, Grace. But the Thornton deal—" Her voice cracked. "The closing is Monday. Nobody else knows about the environmental liability exceptions in Section 12. Nobody else knows about the rare earth mining subsidiary arrangement. Nobody else even knows Frederick's son Michael exists, let alone that he's the real decision-maker for operational integration." I smiled. It probably wasn't a particularly nice smile. "I'm sure Catherine has it all figured out, Grace. She has data-driven protocols and systematic relationship management. What could go wrong?" Grace started crying. Quiet, desperate tears that said she understood exactly what was about to happen to Hammond Capital. "What are we going to do?" "We?" I picked up my briefcase, heavy with 18 years of irreplaceable relationships. "Grace, you're staying here. I'm the one who apparently doesn't fit the collaborative culture. I cleared my computer history, logged out of all the secure servers, and wiped my local cache. I wasn't stealing company property, just removing my personal intellectual fingerprints. If Hammond wanted to navigate the Thornton deal, they'd have to use whatever was in their official files. Good luck with that." I walked to the elevator carrying my box of personal items, feeling lighter than I had in months. Catherine was waiting there with 2 security guards who looked about as comfortable as you'd expect. These weren't corporate stormtroopers. They were working guys who knew me by name, who'd seen me work late nights for a decade. "Make sure he doesn't take any proprietary information," Catherine commanded, still riding high on her power trip. Paul, the head of security who'd worked at Hammond for 12 years, barely glanced at my box. "He's clean, Miss Walsh. Just personal effects." "Fine," she snapped. "Just get him out of here. I want this negativity off my floor." As the elevator doors opened, I turned to Catherine one last time. She was bracing herself for anger, for threats, for some kind of dramatic scene she could tell her mother about later. Instead, I smiled. A genuine, peaceful smile that probably looked completely insane under the circumstances. "Thank you, Catherine," I said. Her forehead wrinkled in confusion. "What?" "For clarifying the company's true priorities. It's been very enlightening. Good luck with the Thornton deal on Monday. The Wyoming Rare Earth Mining Subsidiary Clause is particularly complex." "What Wyoming clause?" she demanded, stepping forward as the elevator doors began to close. "Oh, I'm sure it's all documented in your systematic relationship management database," I said softly. The doors slid shut, cutting off her increasingly panicked face. I walked out of that building into the Chicago afternoon sunshine and felt like a man who'd just been released from prison. The weight of carrying Hammond's problems, of being responsible for other people's quarterly bonuses, of playing corporate politics with entitled children, all of it just evaporated. I drove home to my place in Lincoln Park and poured myself 3 fingers of Maker's Mark bourbon. Then I sat in my leather chair, turned off my phone, and let them marinate in the silence for a while. I spent the weekend doing something I hadn't done in years, absolutely nothing work-related. I worked on my 1967 Mustang in the garage, the one I'd been restoring for 5 years but never had time to finish. Amazing how much clarity you get when you're not carrying the weight of other people's billion-dollar problems on your shoulders. Saturday evening, I grilled a steak, opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving, and watched the sunset from my back deck. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about deal flow or client management or corporate reorganizations. I was just present. It wasn't until Sunday evening that I turned my phone back on. The thing practically vibrated itself off the kitchen counter. 23 missed calls, 31 text messages, a digital avalanche of corporate panic that painted a beautiful picture of Hammond Capital slowly realizing what they'd lost. Grace, 4:47 p.m. Friday. Charles, legal department is asking who authorized your termination. Catherine locked herself in her office. Her mother Jennifer is asking questions. Grace, 6:15 p.m. Friday. The Thornton team called for the pre-closing conference call. Catherine took the meeting. It lasted 12 minutes. Frederick Thornton's assistant called back, asking specifically for you. Catherine told them you were on indefinite leave for personal reasons. I nearly choked on my wine. Personal reasons? The audacity was breathtaking. Grace, 11:30 a.m. Saturday. Emergency meeting this morning. Where are the Wyoming subsidiary files? Catherine is screaming at the IT department. She says you must have deleted them. IT says they never existed on the server. The partners are asking why this wasn't in the digital handover protocols. Grace, 3:45 p.m. Saturday. Catherine tried calling Frederick Thornton directly. His assistant said he only discusses business with you. Catherine told them you were having family issues, but had briefed her completely on the transaction. Charles, what is she doing? I grinned. Of course the Wyoming mining files weren't on the server. The Wyoming arrangement wasn't a standard contractual clause. It was a gentleman's agreement I'd negotiated with Frederick's son Michael about preserving the family's rare earth mineral rights while allowing Hammond to optimize the steel production assets. It existed in my handwritten notes, the ones currently sitting in my home safe. The beauty of it was pure elegance. Without that understanding, any MBA-trained analyst would look at the Wyoming subsidiary and see dead weight, a non-producing asset that should be liquidated immediately to improve the acquisition's return on investment. But those mining rights were Frederick's insurance policy for his grandchildren, his way of ensuring the family would have income streams long after the steel business evolved. Try to eliminate that subsidiary, and Frederick Thornton would walk away so fast it would leave skid marks on Hammond's marble floors. An email from David Mills, the general counsel, marked Urgent. Charles. Significant breakdown in communication protocols regarding your employment status. Please call immediately. We need to discuss immediate reinstatement of your contract before Monday's closing. This appears to be a misunderstanding that we can resolve professionally. Catherine is young and perhaps overzealous in her interpretation of corporate culture initiatives. Misunderstanding, overzealous interpretation. They always had such polite ways of saying we screwed up catastrophically. I didn't reply. I could picture the scene at Hammond perfectly. Sunday night, emergency damage control session. Catherine would be exhausted, her confidence crumbling as she realized that firing me hadn't made her the hero of her own story. It had made her the villain in Hammond's. She'd have the financial projections, the legal documentation, the valuation models. She'd have everything except the most important thing, Frederick Thornton's trust. Another text came through, this one from a number I didn't have saved, but recognized immediately. Frederick's private line. Charles, call me. Name your price. I looked at that message for a long time, swirling the bourbon in my glass. My price wasn't money. My price wasn't even revenge exactly. My price was something Hammond Capital had just declared worthless. Respect for experience, for institutional knowledge, for the understanding that some things in business can't be systematized or optimized or disrupted. My price was dignity. And unfortunately for Hammond, dignity was a currency they'd just spent their last penny of. I set the phone down and finished my bourbon instead. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. Monday morning I was making scrambled eggs when my phone rang. Frederick Thornton's voice, gravelly from 40 years of cigars and tough decisions. They canceled the meeting, he said without preamble. Did they now? I flipped my eggs, keeping my voice neutral. This Catherine woman called my office at 7 a.m., said there were procedural complications that needed to be resolved before we could proceed. She sounded like she'd been awake all night. That's unfortunate, Frederick. Charles, what the hell happened over there? My assistant said this girl told our legal team you were taking indefinite leave for family issues, but that you'd fully briefed her on our arrangement. I turned off the burner and leaned against the counter. They fired me, Frederick. Friday afternoon. Apparently, my management style wasn't collaborative enough for their new corporate culture. The silence on the other end was absolute. I could practically hear Frederick's blood pressure rising. "They fired you," he repeated slowly. 72 hours before closing. "That's correct. And who's handling the transition of our understanding about the Wyoming mining subsidiary?" "Nobody, I imagine. Catherine believes the digital files contain everything necessary for the transaction." Frederick made a sound that was half laugh, half growl. "The digital files show that subsidiary as a $2.3 million liability. They do indeed. Charles, are you free for breakfast this morning?" "Frederick, I'm unemployed. I'm free all week." "Excellent. Palmer House Hotel, 8 a.m. And Charles, don't sign anything with Hammond, not a severance package, not a non-disclosure extension, not a Christmas card. Nothing. Wouldn't dream of it." The Palmer House serves breakfast with the kind of old-world dignity that makes you feel like you're planning something historically significant. Frederick Thornton looked exactly as he always did, immaculate navy suit, silver hair, eyes that had seen everything twice and been impressed by none of it. "They called my lawyers this morning," Frederick said, cutting his toast with surgical precision. "Catherine Walsh personally. She said you were dealing with personal health issues but had complete confidence in her ability to execute the transition seamlessly. The audacity was breathtaking. Health issues? She specifically mentioned that you were under doctor's orders to avoid stress, but had insisted on briefing her thoroughly before your leave. My attorney asked about the Wyoming rare earth mining arrangement, and she said everything was fully documented in the standard acquisition materials. It wasn't just a lie. It was a verifiable, legally dangerous lie that would expose Hammond to massive SEC compliance issues if anyone investigated. She's buying time, I said. She thinks she can charm her way through the technical details and nobody will notice the gaps. She thinks I'm a checkbook with a pulse. Frederick wiped his mouth with a linen napkin. I had my people do some research on Miss Walsh. Apparently, Hammond's board wasn't officially notified of your termination until Saturday morning. HR is reportedly in open rebellion." "That sounds about right." Frederick leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Here's the situation, Charles. I don't do business with amateurs, and I definitely don't do business with people who lie to my face. The deal with Hammond Capital is dead." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick document. It wasn't a merger agreement. But I still need to sell, and I still need someone I trust to manage the transition. Thornton Industrial Holdings is looking for a senior partner. The compensation is $190,000 base plus significant equity participation. The first assignment is to find a new buyer for my company. I looked at the contract. It was freedom. It was vindication. It was the ultimate professional revenge. "There's just one thing," Frederick added, a shark-like grin spreading across his weathered face. "I haven't officially canceled tomorrow's rescheduled meeting with Hammond yet. Catherine called this morning begging for one more chance to clarify the procedural issues. You want to meet with them? I want to see Catherine Walsh's face when she tries to explain why the man who's supposedly on medical leave is sitting on my side of the table as my senior partner." I picked up the pen. "Frederick, it would be my pleasure." "Excellent. Now finish your breakfast. Watching someone's empire crumble is hungry work." Tuesday morning, I walked into Hammond's building wearing my best suit and a smile that probably qualified as a weapon in several states. The lobby was buzzing with nervous energy. You could practically smell the desperation through the air conditioning. Catherine was waiting near the elevators, flanked by her mother Jennifer and the general counsel. When she saw me walk in behind Frederick, her face went through several colors before settling on a shade of green that matched the lobby's marble. "Good morning," Frederick said pleasantly to the assembled group. "I believe we had a meeting scheduled." Jennifer Walsh stepped forward, all damage control and forced smiles. "Mr. Thornton, thank you for your patience with our scheduling complications. Catherine has been working around the clock to ensure a smooth transition." "I'm sure she has," Frederick replied. "I'm particularly interested in hearing her thoughts on the Wyoming rare earth mining subsidiary valuation." All eyes turned to Catherine. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound emerged. "The truth is," Frederick continued, "Charles now works for me, senior partner at Thornton Industrial Holdings, which means if Hammond Capital wants to salvage any part of this relationship, you'll be negotiating with the man you fired." The silence in that lobby was deafening. However, Frederick added with surgical precision, given the misrepresentations about Charles's status and the general unprofessionalism, I'm withdrawing from any acquisition discussions entirely. Catherine finally found her voice. You can't do this. We have preliminary agreements. We had discussions, Frederick corrected. Discussions based on working with competent professionals. That assumption has proven incorrect. He turned to me. Charles, what do you think Hammond Capital might be worth in a distressed asset sale? I pretended to consider it seriously. Given the management instability and reputation damage from this situation, maybe 15 cents on the dollar. 15 cents. Frederick nodded. That seems generous. We turned toward the exit. Behind us I heard Catherine start to cry. Not the elegant tears of a movie executive, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone watching their career implode in real time. Charles, she called out, how could you do this? You worked here for 18 years. I stopped and turned around one final time. The marble lobby, the waterfall, the terrified faces of people I'd worked alongside for nearly 2 decades. Catherine, you're absolutely right. I did work here for 18 years, and you ended that in 30 minutes because you didn't like my management style. I looked around at the assembled crowd of executives, lawyers, and scared employees. Turns out my management style was exactly what Frederick Thornton was paying $4.8 billion for. Thanks for the career upgrade. We walked out into the Chicago morning and Frederick clapped me on the shoulder. How does it feel to be on the winning side? Like justice, I said. 6 months later, Hammond Capital was acquired by a private equity firm for 12 cents on the dollar. Catherine Walsh was not retained in the transition. Jennifer Walsh took early retirement. And me, I'm still at Thornton Industrial Holdings, closing deals and building relationships the old-fashioned way, with handshakes, with trust, and with the understanding that experience isn't something you can download from a business school textbook. Sometimes the young lions forget that the old wolves know exactly where all the bones are buried. In Catherine's case, she learned that lesson the expensive way, $4.8 billion expensive. The corporate world loves to talk about disruption and innovation. But some things never change. Respect is earned, trust takes time to build, and when you fire someone who holds the keys to the kingdom, you better make sure you know where all the doors are first. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed watching entitled Corporate Nepotism get exactly what it deserved, hit that follow button. Trust me, there are more stories where this came from, and they all end with the good guys winning.